Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Candice King with the Village Media, where we speak truth to empower. I have a very special guest with me today, Dr. Wes Bellamy, who is the Executive Director of the John Mercer Langston Institute for African American Political Leadership and a professor at Virginia State University. He is the lead author of a very important report that we're going to be discussing today, titled The Economic State of Black Men and Boys in the United States. Dr. Bellamy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you.
You know, right now, given the state of the economy, especially in our communities, I find this report to be very urgent and necessary, especially as you delve into sort of right now, like where Black men and boys stand in the economy. So, can you talk to us about this report, how it came about, and why the focus on Black men and boys specifically? I remember reading in the report that you framed it not as necessarily a competition, but as a discipline. So I invite you to say more about that.
Sure. And again, thank you so much for having me. We would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge our dear sister, Adrian, and all the work in which you all do at your phenomenal site. We are really thankful for the village. So thanks again for having me. And this report is something that we believe is very timely as well as necessary. We wanted to be intentional with ensuring that individuals reading this report didn't get into a competition of genders, and we didn't make this the Black men against the Black women. We recognize that both subgroups have unique challenges, and in some regard, the state of the economy is impacting both of us. We read the the economic state of Black women and girls, the report that was published back in March. And we thought that that was very timely as well. One of our state senators here in Virginia, LaSharice Aird, came to me and said, "Hey, Wes, I know you've been doing some data collection and research about Black men and boys. Would it be possible for you to present that data at your Black Male Institute in July?" So I told my team, yeah, we got to get to it. Let's make sure we figure that out. And while we were going through the numbers, they were extremely sombering. We did see some instances in which there were North Stars for us to push towards. But nonetheless, we recognize that Black men and boys have a great deal of work to do. And I firmly believe that as a community, we'll be able to turn this train around. But there are some things in which we have to work on immediately.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to say, you know, I know we were talking a little bit before this call. I thought the report was so thorough in really peeling back a lot of layers as to how we got to this point.
Yeah.
In particular, one of the trends I noticed is sort of this pipeline, if you will, of inequity, where you talk about the early literacy rates that are impacting Black boys, and then you sort of chart this course in the report all the way to employment. You know, some of the striking numbers that I came across, you know, in the report that stuck out to me were that less than 17% of Black fourth graders and 14% of eighth graders performed at or above the NAEP proficient in reading. Again, very striking. You know, why was it important for you to track these literacy rates and achievement from an early age?
So for me, I was a high school teacher for 8 years. I've been a dean at an alternative school. I've been obviously a college professor, department chair, and I run a few different mentoring programs, summer academies and the like. So like reading is something that I believe is undoubtedly a gateway to not only economic success, but a trajectory for your future. And when we see the bleak and somber numbers, again, as you alluded to, 17% of all Black fourth graders are reading at a proficiency level. Only 14% of the eighth graders are reading at a proficiency level. It really goes to show, specifically for Black men and boys, that as there is a larger push for them to be placed into special education courses, and then a lower high school graduation rate, and then only 26% of Black males being represented at HBCUs and only 28% of Black males being represented at PWIs, there is a significant issue in the education pipeline in terms of how we're addressing the needs of Black men and boys. And I think that that's something that we really have to look into, and part of our solution strategies was on-ramping a little bit earlier, ensuring that we have reading interventionists and specific strategies for Black men and boys in the K-12 in all schools as a whole. That those are things that, again, I think that are really, when you look at, again, where a young man starts, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, this, in many instances, or far too many instances, it's a tall tale sign of where they're going to be when they're 30, 40, 50 years old if they're not at a proficiency level. I'll just end with this as well. One of the reasons why we thought that the reading and education aspect was so important was because that in many ways we believe that, and the data concludes, that the better you can read, the better you'll be able to be with your money. The better you are with your money, the higher impact or the higher earning potential you'll have. And if you don't have a higher earning potential, then we've seen a correlation with suicide rates. You don't have a earning potential, we've seen a correlation with depression. We've seen a correlation with a lack of value and self-worth. And many of these things lead us to be susceptible for misinformation and the like. So again, it starts very early in terms of us being able to have and develop specific strategies for Black men and boys to on-ramp them onto the path of success.
Yeah, I love those different connections that you made. And just to pick up on one of those threads in particular, when you mentioned earning potential, one of the things that your report highlights is this sort of steady decline for the employment to population rate for Black men in particular.
Yeah.
And then you also sort of get into these concentrations, whether it be in warehousing or related logistics and, transportation as well, who that sector in particular lost close to 100K jobs over a 12-month period. Have you been seeing a similar decline in any other labor sectors as it relates to Black men? And also, if you just want to talk about that employment sector as in general as well.
I'll start with the latter and then go into the specific sector. So one of the things that we saw on the larger scale, when we just are looking at this from 30,000 feet, is that Black men, they make 77 cents for every dollar that a white man makes. So there's income inefficiencies and deficiencies there. There's inequities just all across the board. That was something that was really important for us to understand. Okay, so what is the economic power or the earning power, and how are we being paid in comparison to our counterparts? 77 cents for every dollar, that has to be fixed. Okay, so if we recognize in the workplace brothers aren't being paid the same, then how do we look at what jobs can brothers go into to try to balance the field in some regard? There's a great deal of discussion about brothers going into trade schools or earning a trade, and that would help them be able to level up, if you will. But the data showed that that wasn't necessarily true. We didn't have conclusive evidence to show that there's this mass droves of Black men who are going into trade school or obtaining trades. But even those of which who did go into trade school and obtain a trade, they were still faced with systemic barriers, i.e., the young man who goes and becomes a carpenter or a plumber, before they can go and become an entrepreneur and just work for themselves, they have to get years of experience. Before they can get years of experience, they have to get a job. Before they can get a job, they have to go to training school. Well, to go to training school, or trade school, if you will, you have to pay. Those trade schools also don't usually pay you while you're in the school, which means that you have to find a way to go to school all day in some regard to get your training, and then be able to still sustain yourself and potentially your family, because bills still have to be paid. After you complete training school or trade school, you then have to be able to get a job. Well, in order to have a job, most of them want you to have tools. Those tools are expensive. They come at a cost. Even after you get your tools, you get on the job, we still saw that many of the employers who run, let's just say, the major companies who operate in trade, they are still practicing systemic and very unfortunate hiring practices and advancement practices in terms for you to get into upper management to have a higher earning potential. So even like the likelihood of a Black man making it to a foreman on a job is much lower than that of a white man, because unfortunately many of the companies are white and the hiring practices follow what our history has shown that they will be. Mm-hmm. So then some will say, well, brother, go and just start your own plumbing company or be an entrepreneur. Well, the access to the contracts on the state level, the municipal level, and the federal level still were damaging for black men. There wasn't a clear path in this regard for brothers to just be able to say, okay, I can go and get a contract with, let's just say where I am, the city of Charlottesville, without dedicated strategies by a municipality to be able to help create this pipeline of sorts. When I was in office, I'm the former vice mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia. When I was in office, we created something called the Pipeline of Pathways, as well as we had a designated set-asides, if you will, for minority and African-American companies for contracting purposes. But a lot of municipalities don't do so. So again, when you look at all of those things as a whole, it makes it very challenging for brothers to be able to climb the proverbial economic ladder. And again, when you don't have money or access to resources, it leads to a wide variety of different things on the social and on the social and psychological side. So that's why we were so eager to get this report out to show that, again, y'all, like, it's not as simple as some of the podcast bros are saying. Just go get a trade, you'll be all right. Go listen to some self-help and self-improvement podcasts, and you're gonna be all right. Nah, bruh, it's a lot more to it. And if we don't, again, develop specific strategies to address some of these issues, we're gonna see our brothers continue to go by the wayside and this decline.
No, absolutely. And, as you were talking and sort of talking about, again, how these inequities pile up, I want to actually turn to solutions because I think the report is very intentional about not necessarily just presenting the issues, but also purporting some solutions. So can you talk through what intervention you feel requires the most immediate attention right now?
So I think there's three things. We have a list of 6 priorities, but there are 3 who I would say that we have to look at implementing on the immediate. The first one is not an economic data point. It's a psychological standpoint or data point, or excuse me, it's a psychological point of emphasis that I would like to make for us as a community. We have to stop calling our young brothers YNs. We have to stop this derogatory language when we're framing and subjugating our young men to particular language. And those of your viewers who don't know what a YN is, just ask your nephew or your son or somebody. I'm not going to dignify that term right now, but there's this whole culture of calling our young black men YNs, and that only leads to them believing that they're less than and inferior. So that's one part. Secondly, I can't say it enough. Dedicated strategies from an educational perspective and a municipal perspective. So on the educational side, we need to encourage schools to hire more black male teachers. Data shows very clearly that when young black men have black male teachers, their likelihood of success goes up tremendously. Yeah. So you got to have dedicated pipelines to get black men in the classroom. We have to have dedicated strategies for getting young black men to become better readers at a more proficiency level before 4th grade. So that's kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, meaning that we need institutions or schools as a whole to provide reading interventionists at a very early age to, again, ensure that these young brothers are getting the level of attention that they need so that they can become reading proficient. And then, again, on an economic standpoint, from a municipal aspect, we think that there are 2 things that we want local municipalities and state municipalities to do immediately. One, on the local side, we want you to create pipeline to pathway programs. We need, again, programs in which the cities, and we recognize that not every municipality has access to a trade program or even an industry in which can develop jobs at a higher level, but we're asking those municipalities that do to partner with those that don't. Let's be creative and work with our community colleges to ensure that the skills are being caught, and we need the municipalities to cover the tab. However you can get creative to cover the tab, to get these brothers in these programs, we need you to do so. It can be done because I've done it. From a statewide level, we need dedicated set-asides for African Americans. Some will say, well, if you go and become SWAM certified, that's for small women and minority-owned businesses. You go and get your certification. That gets you into better access at the state level. But we've seen that doesn't always pan out. We need, again, dedicated strategies to address these economic issues for black men and boys. And we want every state to develop a commission on African American boys and men because we are currently in a state of emergency. emergency. So those things we're pushing for folks to do immediately. And we've seen when even institutions like the city of Baltimore, Maryland, and others who have created and come forth with these kind of strategies, they've had tangible impact on violence decreasing, on the murder rates going down, and the economics of black men and boys increasing. When we've seen institutions like HBCUs, Alabama A&M, and Morgan State specifically, who were mentioned in the report, when they developed targeted strategies for black men and boys, the retention rates at their HBCUs for black men and boys rose tremendously. They were able to also recruit larger amounts of black men and boys. So again, like, there are strategies that are out there that are working. We just have to look at what is being done, and then figure out how we can duplicate, copy, and paste so that the betterment of our brothers can be felt.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I loved about your report is the way you structure it. You say, we expect people to digest this report, from this policy standpoint, from this scholarship standpoint, and
Yeah.
obviously both as a scholar, and someone as a practitioner, I find that to be very useful as well. But I just, as you were talking, it made me think, are there have you like distributed this report yet to other policy movers and shifters, and, just what that response has been like? Because I think that, more than the data that you've presented, the solutions that you presented, as you just mentioned, I think can really help move the needle. And so just, has there been any response on the policy side that you've been getting so far?
So yes, we've been able to get this information into several members of the Congressional Black Caucus's hands. In Virginia specifically, they just stood up we just stood up rather, a commission on men and boys, not black men and boys specific, but I'm working and pushing to have a special caveat for black men and boys. We've been able to get this into the hands of several different policy institutes, so it's moving along. But I'll be candid, it's not moving in the way in which it should be, not yet thus far at least. The quote unquote major mainstream media publications, they haven't been eager to pick this up, which kind of plays also into much of what we heard from some brothers, like saying, hey, when it comes to us, not a lot of people care. It's just kind of move on. This will be a short news cycle. So we're so thankful for you all at the Village for even reading the report and reporting out on it. But yeah, it's been, we've had some headway, we've had some success, but I recognize that this is a long-term play. And also we're looking at doing different reports, if you will, about different states specifically, so that we can be even more targeted and create tangible solutions for those who are looking to help solve this issue.
Oh, absolutely. And, we feel like this is a very urgent issue and something that we need to get more eyes on. So we thank you for also just your report on this. And, just speaking of, that long-term strategy, I know that this report in particular, according to what you all have written, is going to be an annual tradition.
Yes, ma'am.
And so just looking ahead to next year, what are some different directions that you plan to take this research in?
Yeah, so this is going to be an annual report. Our goal is to have this published in July of every year, and it'll coincide with our Black Parent Leadership Institute for Young Black Males. So a couple of things that we're looking to do in 2027. I can't say everything, but I'll say a couple things. One, as I just alluded to, or previously alluded to and aforementioned, we're looking at doing state-by-state specific reports to get data specifically about how states are performing and how black men and boys are performing by state. We'll be starting with Virginia. We'll also be analyzing North Carolina, Washington, D.C., and Maryland, so kind of that mid-Atlantic region, if you will. Oh, and South Carolina, excuse me. So we'll be looking at those 5 states or 4 states in the District of Columbia. But also having different conversations with different brothers who are already achieving. We're going to have another point of emphasis in terms of specific things in which they've done, and then brothers who feel like they are at the lowest end of the economic spectrum, looking at different ways in which we can assist them, and in what strategies over a 6 to 8 month period of time that we were using to see if they actually work. So we have a subgroup of of some young men who we'll be working with, getting them in pipeline programs now, and then looking at, like, if they're starting in November, December, and they're finishing up in May or June, what has been their story? Did this work? What transpired? And then reporting out to see, again, what strategies stick. So we got some things up our sleeve, but we're really looking forward to moving forward.
I have to say this report was really thorough, so I can only imagine, where you all go next. I think that this is a really a powerful foundation that you started. And my last question is, in the spirit of the nation's 250 anniversary, I just wanted to sort of get your sense, for the next 250 years, what do you believe we owe Black boys and Black men for the next 250 years to come? And what could we be doing now, or what sort of future should we try to build now to make that a reality?
That's a great question. I think we owe them value. I think we owe our Black men and boys reminding them that they're valued. And that's not a dollar amount. That's not something you put a price tag on. It's simply a belief that you're valuable, because when I value you, then that means I can respect you. When I can respect you, because I value you, I won't harm you. If I won't harm you, then that means that I'll help you succeed. And in turn, because you recognize your own value, you'll help others succeed. So over the next 250 years, I just want to remind brothers that they are valued, and we're not in competition with anyone. You as a man have to value yourself, and you have everything within you to become successful. These systems are working exactly as they were designed to, but we've broken systems since we've been over here. So we'll continue to get to where we need to be, but I need you, brother, to remind yourself of how valuable you are, and then let's go out and get to work.
What a way to end. Thank you so much again, Dr. Bellamy, for your urgent work and also for your time today. This conversation was very illuminating.
Thank you, Dr. King. We appreciate you.